How much do you know about Antarctica? Welcome to the Everything Antarctica Podcast, where your hosts Matty Jordan and Jonny Harrison will answer all of your questions. We'll talk to globally recognised experts, discuss current affairs, news, and ultimately highlight why Antarctica should matter to you. Come on a journey as we unpack everything you've ever wondered about the world's most extreme environment. Welcome back to another episode of the Everything Antarctica Podcast. I'm your host, Matty Jordan. I'm joined by my co-host once again, Jonny Harrison, and today we are talking about recreation in Antarctica.
Easy.
So there's two ways to look at this, Jonny. We've got a lot of recreation that happens down in Antarctica. It varies between different stations and different times of year and all that sort of stuff. But I thought today we might make this a two-part episode. So the first episode we can talk about recreation inside the base and what some of the typical things are that people get up to inside when the weather's bad or when they can't be bothered going outside. And then in part two, we'll talk about recreation outside. We'll talk about external stuff. So do you want to kick us off?
Sounds good. So Scott Base, there's plenty of indoor recreational activities. I suppose, you mentioned on bad weather, but also obviously in winter when it ends up being dark outside for so long, what do you end up doing for all those times? So we've got a big movie room, which is usually frequented quite often and by a lot of people really, with a vast array of DVDs and movies on file, which is great to sort of spend a bit of time and popcorn and all that, eh?
Yeah, I think movies in general are a pretty traditional thing to do in Antarctica. I think there's a typical movie, John Carpenter's The Thing. It's a bit of a horror movie from back in the 80s, and I think there's a bit of a cult in Antarctica built around that movie, particularly watching it after the last flight leaves for the summer, and it's just that winter team that are together, so bit of a tradition there to scare each other and watch that movie and just get a bit of an idea of what we're in for.
Yes, and while that's completely science fiction and not really that based in reality, I don't even think it was filmed in Antarctica, but anyway. I guess one thing that is filmed in Antarctica is the Antarctic Film Festival that happens every year. So at the end of, or usually sort of towards the end of winter, isn't it, that all of this personnel at the stations over winter, you've got the option to partake in a unique film festival, which is only open to Antarctic and subantarctic research stations. So that's a bit of fun. Yeah,
that's cool. That's the they call it the 48-hour film fest. So what happens is there'll be a bunch of stations that have put their hand up and said, yeah, look, we're interested in doing this. And then different stations will be asked to choose a different object, item, character, action, word, saying, whatever it might be. And then on the Friday, typically of a long weekend, on the Friday, those 5 items are compiled together and then sent out to all of the stations. And essentially everyone has 48 hours to put a film together, but they have to incorporate each of those 5 items so that basically people know that they haven't been cheating, because, one year it might be, you need to incorporate the saying, Antarctica is great or something like that, and that has to be in the film. And then they get loaded into a central area and they're sent around to all of the different stations, and then you typically have a big night, sit down and watch them, and everyone gets to vote on what they think is the best movie, who was the best character, what was the best use of the 5 elements, and all that sort of stuff. So that's a real fun one. So movies and film and TV are pretty massive down there for recreation. What else have we got?
Yes, we've also got a lot of indoor physical activities that can be done. So gymnasium that has a whole lot of your standard sort of gym equipment, so you can do weights right the way through to plenty of cardio, and there's a little climbing wall, so if the weather's not great outside, you can do a bit of sort of bouldering of sorts on the artificial wall inside. And what other sort of physical activities are there that you can do inside the base?
Yeah, those are the big ones. I mean, the gym is frequented quite a lot by a whole bunch of different people, whether you're there for a short time or a long time, and it often becomes part of people's regular routines, and we'll speak about routine in future episodes, but often people will go to the gym at the same time. For me, in winter, I woke up at about 5:45, and by 6 o'clock I was in the gym every day, and that was just kind of how my day worked, how it panned out. But I made use of the bouldering wall. I mean, I do a lot of climbing back in New Zealand regularly, and I'm a member of the local gym here. that was a huge part for me. I just loved being able to get out there, and it's worth noting, like, that's not a huge facility, but I think it actually might have been a winter project that a winter team put together and just built that. So all very structurally sound, all done by professionals and things like that, but just like a massive contributor to the well-being and the recreational things available on station. So that's a really cool one.
Yeah, and then I guess you sort of move into things like table tennis and pool, all of those kind of sport type, or competitive kind of games like that. And then there's plenty of board games and other kind of puzzles, all of those kind of anything that you can think of to sort of take your mind off the day-to-day and kind of get out of your situation for a minute. That's kind of, you pretty well think of it, it's probably exists down there, doesn't it?
Yeah, the table tennis and pool are pretty big ones. We often have like round robin tournaments that are going, and they might last for a week, or it might just be an evening, or it might go for the whole season. So you might have a tournament where at the end of the month you crown a winner, and then you start again for the next month, and then by the end of the summer season or the winter season you've got 5 people who have won over the 5 previous months, and then they get together and have another tournament, and then you crown someone the champion at the end of that. So I've definitely seen that with table tennis and with pool in previous seasons. So yeah, pretty cool. Adds some friendly competition, but there's nothing stopping people from just going there and having a little game themselves. That doesn't necessarily have to be competitive. And
then I guess sort of there's plenty of books to read, some pretty big libraries, and some pretty cool spaces to read those books too.
Yeah. So Scott Base has got 2 libraries. There's a fiction and a non-fiction. Well, that's the way that I like to distinguish it. But some of the other stations also have pretty large reserves of books and things like that. So a lot of people use that as their getaway, just to go and chill out, read a book, read a series, learn something about Antarctica, or just lots of different things, loads of books. One of the things that I found pretty cool was a lot of people, once they're immersed in that Antarctic environment and they start to understand where they are, the landmarks, and where some of the heroic explorers were back in the day, they'll actually pick up a book that was written by one of them, and they'll start to see, oh, this is where the hut is, and this is where they walked to, or this is where a cache was, or this is where they dropped their supplies and things like that. And it starts to become a bit more real. You can start to feel like you're part of that story from back in the day. So yeah, books are massive. Yeah,
it's very much surreal to sort of go and walk in some of those footsteps and be like, yep, okay, these are these places that you read about, and whether you read about them down on the ice or beforehand, it's pretty cool to sort of be part of that history and kind of really be immersed in it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of books that get passed around, so someone will be sitting there reading a book and someone will look at it and go, oh yeah, I want to try and get that next, and you tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, before you put that book away, can you come and give it to me before someone else snatches it up, sort of thing. So a lot of that, the non-fiction stuff is pretty good, and a lot of the non-fiction that people read is all about Antarctica and the nearby environment and things like that, which is pretty cool. But the fiction stuff, you might see someone who picks up an 8-part series, and they'll read that throughout the season, or read that throughout the week, or however long they're there for, and just use that as their quiet time to get away from things.
Yeah, and there's also quite a lot of good resources as far as, particularly in the summer months, often on a Sunday night or something like that in the bar after you've sort of had your roast dinner for the week. You go into the bar and you'll often hear a bar talk. So that might be a scientist has come back in from the field or whatever, and they're presenting what it is that they've found or what it is that they're looking into. Or and often my first winter we ended up having every Sunday night we would end up taking turns talking about a particular topic. So nice. One of the guys had spent a whole bunch of time traveling through Africa, and so you end up getting to understand these people that you live with a bit better, and kind of actually sharing some of their experience, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool. I kind of wish we did that in our winter. It would have been a really cool way to understand what some of your fellow colleagues have been up to in the past and get to know them a little bit better. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we kind of called it family night. So it was like Sunday night was family night, and often we would take turns at cooking, and so there'd be like somebody would be doing the cooking, and it would be down to them, and then somebody else would be would have a bar talk, and often compile a whole bunch of slides and sort of talk through them and talk through their trip, and just a really nice way to sort of pass the time, and kind of again that kind of bring everyone together at the end of the week, which was really cool, and sort of fill that time that way, which was really nice.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. One thing that was really popular through our winter was darts. So we had the folks from McMurdo that would come over for a competitive, intercontinental, we called it, intercontinental darts competition. And it would be the same folks that would come over every time. But again, just a really cool way to meet some of your colleagues across the hill that are nearby, and share some friendly competition and get to meet some of them as well. So cool.
Back in that darts thing goes back years. So they used to do it via radio, and they used to even do it with the South Pole station. And there was an Australian station that partook in it as well. And it was kind of funny because years later, there's two guys sort of catching up, and one of them sort of said, "Oh yeah, I was at whatever Australian station, whatever." And "Oh yeah, we played against you in darts, rah-de-rah." And somehow it came up that actually the Australian base didn't have a darts board, and they just kept on chucking pieces of paper at a waste bin and kept on feeding back wrong scores. So plenty of competition across the continent as well, not just inside of the base.
That's classic Antarctica.
Yeah, so good, eh?
Yeah. All right, what sort of other recreation stuff happens inside?
There's plenty of musical instruments, so often people, and it's one of those ones where it's quite a good environment to learn a new skill, particularly in those winter months, right? So it's not uncommon to sort of see people picking up, wanting to play guitar or learn the piano or all those kind of things, and often there's people that have got those skills and more than happy to teach other people, eh? So,
we, in a similar vein, the whole learning experience, we had a couple of people that were learning new languages over winter, so they'll might have an audio tape, or they might have a book, or some YouTube videos or something that they're watching, and they'll take some time away at the end of each day and maybe go and spend an hour just picking up some new phrases. It might be that they'd planned to travel to South America or something, so they decided that learning a bit of Spanish was going to be good so that they're ready to go once they finish in Antarctica and things like that. So people make their own entertainment as well inside, and sometimes it's with a whole bunch of other people, but sometimes it's very individual as well. Yeah,
plenty of arts and crafts and those kind of things, or if you've got little woodworking projects or something like that. One of the things that I always enjoyed was the secret Santas that you'd have to sort of make a present for someone on base for Christmas, and it usually there was quite a varying range of skill levels and products produced at the end of it, but just really cool to sort of, again, that sense of community and being able to actually make something out of what's down there is a really cool way to pass the time.
Yeah, I could not believe the creativity of some people. I remember, I haven't actually been there for a Secret Santa. I haven't done a Christmas down south, but I have helped a few people build some little Secret Santa gifts, and one that I saw was for the electrician, actually working on the wind farm, and it was a replica of the wind turbines, but they actually spun, and they were hooked up to a little power supply, and you could plug a little AA battery onto the end of it, and the blades would turn around. And obviously, there was an unskilled person who'd prepped this, but got some help from the electrician to sort that out. And from all accounts, the electrician who received that gift was just over the moon, just so personal and so sentimental to them. They just loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what other things can you think of, that other skills or things that people want to learn?
We did a few cool things over winter as well. So we had a hide and seek competition through the base, which was sort of in the middle of winter, but I think we had about 7 or 8 people that said that they were really keen to do it. So we set some boundaries. These are the areas that you're allowed in. You're not allowed under the floors, or you're not allowed in the restricted areas. You're not allowed in the in the workshops and all that sort of stuff. But it's a reasonably big base, especially for a small number of people to play hide and seek. So I volunteered to be the person who was looking, and we'd set aside an afternoon, so I think we had about 5 hours or something to get through it all. And I thought, it's only going to take half an hour. It's not going to be very long before you find someone. But it took me an hour and a half, and I still hadn't found the first person. There were some pretty intense hiding spots in there, and you can imagine just so many nooks and crannies all over the place. So we had someone who was hiding in the movie room, but there were a bunch of other people that were in on it who were watching a movie. And when I opened the door, I didn't want to disturb them watching the movie. I just said, "Look, have you seen so-and-so playing hide and seek? And I thought he might be in here, but I don't want to disturb the movie." And they were just like, I didn't really get much out of them. There was no indication that he was or wasn't in there, and I felt bad, so I shut the door and left, and turns out he was in there. Only found him about 3 hours later, when he'd pretty much given up, and I'd walked back into the movie room going, "No, I don't really care if I'm going to disturb people now," and he's just sitting on the couch watching the movie, and I'm like, "No, you've been here the whole time." So, there's loads of little hiding areas, so hide and seek was real fun for us.
We did mini golf, and so we ended up doing a mini golf course and invited a bunch of Americans over to play with that, and so each person for the winter team kind of got assigned a different area of the base to make a bit of a course and make a hole each, and away they went. That was a good fun.
Yeah, mini golf I think is one of those traditions as well through the winter, so it happens pretty much every year, and you get some pretty creative people that make some really interesting holes. We've got a few things available in a room there with, might be like a wooden slat that's got little holes cut out of it, or we might use the holes in the bottom of the doors to putt the golf ball through and things like that. So yeah, super fun. We had folks from McMurdo over as well, and so they got to partake in that, and everyone dresses up. There was a Happy Gilmore there, someone who'd like kind of dressed up in that sort of gear, and people who were caddies just carrying the putters and things like that. So yeah, super fun. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I think Scott Base has a particularly good set of clothes and stuff like that, and various different outfits and hats and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of dress up closet of kids' dreams, I suspect.
Yeah, people get pretty creative, and when they come down, people often bring new costumes, and that's might be what they wear for the year for special events and things like that, and it's pretty customary for people to leave them there. So this collection just keeps growing and growing, and pretty much everything you need you'll be able to find somewhere at Scott Base. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, the other thing that we did was one of the folks in the winter put together an escape room. So we had 2 teams, and we were upstairs in one of the field closets that was lockable behind the cages, and we had certain little clues and little snippets of information that we had to do to then progress to the next part, and eventually we managed to find a key and we could unlock the room. But that wasn't the end of it, because there were a bunch of other challenges that we needed to do as well, and it was kind of neck and neck there at one stage, and just super exciting, and it just showcases the creativity of some people and what people will do to not only fill the time but just to find something fun for the colleagues and friends to get involved with. So that was really cool, really creative, that one.
Yeah, and plenty of decorations and things like that, and various different parties and things which sort of break up the year pretty quickly, and yeah, momentous occasions to sort of celebrate and things like that. So the year goes by so quick, eh?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's it feels like it's over before you know it. So, yeah. A couple of summers ago, there was also a murder mystery. So there was a group that put together this, basically a whole collection, and there were a whole lot of clues, and people got together to try and find out, how that all went down. So yeah, pretty interesting, and people do create their own fun, which is great. So no shortage of things to do inside. Is there anything else you can think of?
Not off the top of my head, but yeah, I'm sure we've missed plenty of things.
Yeah, I think like now with the introduction of high-speed internet to Antarctic research stations, people are sort of on their computers and watching movies, and even gaming. Some people with like gaming computers and stuff down there that will play online games and things. So yeah, no shortage of things to get up to.
Yeah, the level of connection's just the big change, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Just being able to video call home and chat to people back in the real world, so to speak, and find out what they're up to. That ability to do that has really changed not so much the dynamic of things, but has made it a lot easier for folks who are away from friends and family for so long to stay in touch.
Yeah, and just being involved in people's lives that are not down there, right? Just being able to stay contact and be part of those big milestones and back home.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. That's about it for indoor recreation. There's probably a whole bunch of things that we've missed, and things that might be relevant to different Antarctic stations that different folks get up to as well. So if you've spent some time at a different station and you've got some indoor recreational ideas or opportunities or things that you get up to, let us know. It'll be really cool, and it might be something that we introduce to Scott Base if and when we're back down there. So really keen to hear from you guys, but hopefully that's given you a bit of a taste as to what we get up to inside the station. Yeah,
and so stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll be talking about the external or outdoor recreational activities and what we get up to outside. So.
Yeah, probably more to speak about there, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
looking
awesome.
forward to it.
Oh, thanks for listening to this episode of the Everything Antarctica Podcast. I'm your host, Matty Jordan, here with Jonny Harrison, and stay tuned for part 2. That's it for today's episode of the Everything Antarctica Podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about us as hosts, you can find us on Instagram at Matty K. Jordan and at Jonny Harrison NZ. We're also on socials. You can find us at Everything Antarctica. This episode will be released on all streaming platforms, and the long-form video will be found on YouTube. Check us out wherever you listen to your podcasts.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. This will really help us in our mission to make this podcast as good as it possibly can be. Please share this episode with your friends and social networks so we can spread the word to more people.
Until next time, stay cool.